Mafalda, hello. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you.
You are a tea master, and you specifically serve, let me just check my notes, gong fu cha, is that correct?
Yes, yeah.
I came across one of your tea ceremonies a couple of months back, and you had me absolutely captivated. So could you tell me, first of all, before explaining the tea, how did you come across this?
Yes, completely by accident. I actually, when I first arrived to Australia, I was looking for a job in my area. I did my BA in product design and my master's in industrial design, but I found tea instead. And I just got access to books, and it was actually how I started going down the rabbit hole, because tea has a lot of rabbit holes, may they be the ceramics or even the materials that the ceramics are made of. It's very much niche. And then the different types of teas, the different types of regions, the different types of traditions. It all was very captivating. It kind of was the subject which I never seen an end to. The more you read, the more you realize that you know nothing. Like it was very captivating. So I started reading a lot more, and then I started ordering teas from other countries, teas that I never heard of, and I started brewing it this way, and it opened doors that I never expected to be open, with something as, mundane as we think of tea as such a everyday kind of thing to share, but is very much deep rooted in the human experience. It's 5,000 years old, so at least the way that we drink it, anthropologists have found evidence that I think it was Neanderthals used to chew on the leaves to give them energy, sort of like they used to in South America chew on the coca leaves. So
all cultures obviously have a historical connection with tea.
Yes.
And so your
Majority.
first culture, what was the gateway culture?
Well, I think the tea plant, Camellia sinensis, it's native around Asia. So it has Tibet, Myanmar, and India, China, obviously. So it's in that region. But the Portuguese have gone to China and established commerce relationships for, I think it was this. Oh, I don't want to say it wrong now. I can't remember. I think it was the 1600s, and the missionaries would go and try to convert people to Christianity there, and when they would bring back.
Because you're Portuguese.
I am.
So was that the gateway?
It was.
Uh-huh.
Well, my mom really treasured loose leaf tea. We have, up to 2 years ago, it was the only tea plantation in Europe that was left, was in the Portuguese islands. So she always had like a tin of loose leaf tea from there, and it was only for like special guests, like the special shiner. So it's for a special occasion. So there was always like that. There was something special about that particular tea. It wasn't everyday tea, the one that you buy in the supermarket, $5 for 500 tea bags. It was like something different, something that you sit down to share tea with and share conversations with around that tea.
Incredible.
So, yeah.
Would you like to share a little bit about this Gong Fu Cha and the magic of its qualities?
Yes. So Gong Fu Cha is, I don't want to say the Chinese ceremony, because although there is a ceremonial component to it, Gong Fu Cha literally translated means making tea with skill or intention. So it kind of became more of a folklore tradition more than a ceremony. You can still go to very fancy places and have something very like formal, but people do this literally in the street and in the house. I've seen people doing it in their cars, in a bus stop. So wherever they can sit and have access to hot water, they'll do it. So this is a Gaiwan. It's basically the first teapot ever invented. It's a cup with a lid, and the cups are a lot smaller than we're normally used to, because drinking tea in China, it's more about the appreciation of the flavor. If you want to drink a big mug of tea, you can also do so, but drinking tea like this is almost an experience on itself. For example, when you're making tea the Western way, you have a big pot of tea and you have a small amount of tea leaves, and you let it brew for a considerable amount of time. So all of those, I would say, different layers that the tea has and different flavors that the tea has kind of get compacted into the one, because it steeps for quite a considerable amount of time. So it kind of gets, it's still very nice, still appreciate it, I still crave it, and it's still quite complex. But when you're making tea like this, you are putting a lot more tea in a less lot of water, and the infusion times are of seconds. So you are stopping the tea and creating layers, which allows you to rediscover the same tea over and over and over again. You can have the same tea with the same temperature, but you leave it for 2 seconds more, and it's something different.
Wow.
And you can do that if it's a good quality tea up to 10 times.
That's incredible. And so, correct me if I'm wrong as well, with tea, it's the same plant that you get different leaves at different times. So not only you can get different leaves at different times, but you can boil it at different times. So there's these like infinite sort of experiences.
Yes. There is. So the tea plant, it's called Camellia sinensis, and then there's different varieties of Camellia sinensis. They are indigenous to different parts of the world. So Camellia sinensis variety sinensis is what most people have when they're drinking green tea or white tea. Camellia sinensis variety Assamica is normally the Indian black teas, something that will go with milk or a pu'er. Teas have different flushes, so the most pristine or sought after flush is the first flush, which is normally around April. Then there's second, third, and fourth. In some countries, there's only thirds, 3, because they are very high in altitude and they have snow, so the plants go dormant. But the spring flush, the one that is around April, that's almost the peak of all the tea connoisseurs. They want that particular flush, and that's because all of the nutrients, all of the chlorophyll and the polyphenols, all of those things have been like dormant in the plant when the plant is going through winter, and then in spring all of those new bursts of little buds, they are packed with all of the goodness that tea is known to have. So to have that first flush is normally very pricey, but it's very good.
Delicacy.
It is a delicacy. It's like a little treat. You still have the second and third flushes, which depending on the countries and depending even on the way that the tea master produces the tea, they can be amazing. Some of them can even be better than the first flush. It's just a question of perception and being open-minded to trying everything else and not just focus on what the experts say. I believe that you are the ultimate critic. No one can tell you this tastes like this and this tastes like that. I find that extremely pretentious, and it's not true because each palate is different from each other. It depends on what you grew up eating and what you eat now. If you like spicy food, if you like food that is too hot and keep burning your palate, that will affect it. There's a bunch of things that affect the way that you perceive something. If you have a cold and you can't smell, all of that is involved. So I think that the tasting of the tea is a very personal thing.
And that's encouraged.
And the more you do it, the more connections you're forming in your brain. Like a lot of men, for example, have a hard time when drinking tea because sometimes teas are floral and they don't know the different smells of different plants, of different flowers. Women kind of know a little bit more, but the more you train and the more you force yourself to remember, those connections in your brain get stronger and stronger, and you get to the point where you don't even have to think about it. It's the same with wine sommeliers and coffee connoisseurs and all of the people that get to a point where they become experts. It's not because they were born that way. It's because they trained and did it over and over again until it became almost a second nature.
That refinement happens.
Yeah.
Do you want to tell us a little bit about the benefits of tea?
Yes, sure. I always try to stay a little bit away from the benefits just because I am not a doctor. So I don't want people to think that I'm just...
effects on the body or the brain,
well, there's a lot of studies. So people can actually now, and there's more and more studies being done, people can go and research and see the papers. There's quite a lot of studies done on tea about lowering cholesterol, about helping with your gut bacteria and gut flora and getting that harmonized. My favorite thing about tea is the fact that it has a particular amino acid called Ltheanine, and its chemical composition is very similar to almost a lubricant that we have in our brain. So when you drink it and it goes to your stomach, it gets immediately absorbed by the lining, and it crosses the blood-brain barrier. So it goes straight to your brain, and it attaches itself to your cannabinoid receptors, and it triggers your brain into producing alpha brain waves, which are the same brain waves that you produce when you're meditating and when you're concentrating and when you're like very calm. It releases the caffeine because it does have caffeine, especially if it is one of the first flushes. Caffeine is a defense mechanism for the tea plant, so they want to protect those young shoots, those little buds. And the caffeine has a different effect because of that amino acid in your body than, for example, coffee. When you drink coffee all the time, I don't want to see you get addicted, but you kind of do.
You do.
When you get into that mindset of, I can't even
have my day without...
I can't even look at you until I have a cup of coffee.
So you don't drink coffee anymore?
I don't drink coffee anymore.
Wow.
Not because I don't like it.
Yeah.
I like espressos, and I just feel like instead of having an espresso, I have a whole pot of tea. So that's my reasoning, but I still love coffee.
Yeah.
I won't say that I will never drink it again. I will, of course.
Yeah.
But
the different effects that you're talking about as well, that you're just so aware of, like this cannabinoid receptors, it kind of makes sense that tea and meditation go hand in hand.
Oh, completely. You look back in history and you have the Zen movement and the Buddhist movement, Taoist, you have even Confucianism. It was all blended. Tea was, what they call it, was the elixir of life, because it was through tea that you could meditate without falling asleep, and you could take the emotions out of the situation and see things very pragmatically. And even in a lot of places in Asia, tea is given the credit for the evolution of their society, because it was only after they had tea houses that people from all walks of life had a place where they could meet and discuss without that being part of the interaction. So all of the tea houses in Japan, for example, and some in China, you have to bow to go in, to kind of humble everyone that goes into the tea house, as we are all the same. All the weapons, all the swords had to be left outside. And it didn't matter if you were a king or if you were a peasant working in the fields. You just, once you walk in, you're just a person. So music evolved tremendously, and art and poetry and everything just had a huge societal boom.
A co-evolution.
It was.
That's
and
incredible.
I think that's
It's like
missing.
a flow state, induced flow state, right? So
Yeah.
is it both sides of the brain are sort of being unified?
And
for
you
that?
lower your walls as well. You become a lot more empathetic. You stop trying to change the other person's mind, and you become more focused in listening to what the person is saying.
Tea for the whole world,
I know,
please.
I know. That's what I'm saying.
Wow.
I think that's part of the reason why I fell in love with it so much, because I felt that, especially coming from a Western side of things, we don't have rites of passage anymore. We don't have like cultural gatherings. We don't even have people in our circles that think differently than we do. We all live in little bubbles, and we don't experience
Challenge.
each other. We don't experience different opinions. We don't, like the max that we have is like, the racist uncle on Facebook that says something and you just unfriend, and that's it. You don't have to deal with that. But when you sit down, especially because tea is so non-threatening, everyone has an experience with drinking tea. It's not something that people will be like, oh my God, she's going to pin me to the wall.
Yeah.
It's just sit
Let's
down,
sit down and have a
some
cuppa.
tea. Yeah.
Have a tea.
Yeah.
But the ceremonial steps, that obviously enhances something for you personally, or not. Do you want to share a bit about that? Because you obviously just have cups of tea at home,
Yes,
It's not that you sit down all the time and make it an experience.
So it kind of links into the coffee conversation that we were having. Like, coffee is addictive because of the caffeine, and you even have signs of withdrawal. You can't talk to other people until you have a cup. You have to have a second one just to get through the day. All of those things, if you were anything else, you'd be like worried. But because it's coffee, kind of is accepted. Tea, people get addicted, not because of the caffeine, because the caffeine has, because of the amino acid, the Ltheanine, the symbiosis between that and the caffeine makes that the caffeine is released throughout a bell wave. So throughout the whole day, while you're awake, it just gets released slowly. So you don't have like that high, and then
that's with tea. Sorry,
that's with
so
tea.
coffee's the
It's like
spike.
Coffee is the spike.
Yeah, and caffeine.
And caffeine just goes.
Tea is the slow
the
release.
caffeine through tea goes throughout the whole day, and people get addicted to making a cup of tea because of the ritual. It's the boiling the kettle. It's choosing the tea, and if you have it like this, I think it even becomes more of a mindfulness exercise, because you can seclude yourself and be an experience that is very much introspective, and you pay attention to everything. You just, the way that you pour, you look at the leaves, you smell the tea, and the fact that every single infusion is different, and that you can rebrew over and over again. You can put music on. You can. Is just something you become very involved without even realizing. And for me, that was key. I tend to have a very busy mind, and especially when I'm trying to meditate. 2 minutes in, my mind is like, what are we going to do in 2050? You know, it's just like, what? So to be able to physically do something and to allow the mind to go blank and to just focus and be really present, that for me has been a tremendous change, because it's something that you do start to apply to other parts of your life.
So what kind of tea, because I recall you saying this prior, what type of leaf is the one that if you have a lot of cups, you eventually sort of have a drunk feeling?
Oh,
because
yes.
that's not just from normal black tea, is it? That you would get in a tea bag.
Normally loose leaf.
Yeah.
So tea bags that, or tea that goes into tea bags have been tea crushed and curled. And it just doesn't have the same impact, I don't find. For me, when I want to get that, what we call tea drunk, when you want to get that tea drunk, you use big leaves and normally loose leaf or pu'er. Pu'er is a type of tea that can be loose or compressed into a disc or a brick. They used to be the currency. They used to exchange that tea for horses with Tibet. So it's still a type of tea that exists and has become very popular recently because a lot of people use it.
What's the name, sorry?
Pu'er.
Pu'er. How do you spell that?
Puerh.
Okay.
And a lot of people use it to get tea drunk.
Incredible. Thank you so much for sharing that. The light's changing at the moment. I'm getting a bit blinded, so we'll just go inside and you can show me your tea ceremony.
Yay. Okay.
Okay, cool.
Okay, so thank you for going inside. What tea are you going to be serving me today?
I am going to be serving a green tea from Fujian province in China. This one is called Jasmine Pearls.
Oh, it's so fresh.
Yes, this is a tea that I drink when I want to feel a little bit pampered and a little bit fancy. The process to make this tea is incredibly intricate and very, very. People that make this tea are so hardworking. I just have to take my hat off to them, because you don't really think about all of the work and passion and knowledge that is needed to make artisan teas, to make specialty teas, because you're so used to seeing tea being served as a commodity product in supermarkets and whatnot, that when you see really good quality tea, it's hard to comprehend the amount of work that is behind it. But this particular tea, it's made with normally the first flush, so that tea that is picked during April, and it has traditional pluck, which is the bud and the first two leaves. They wither it a little bit under the sun, so it loses a little bit of its moisture, and they get thousands and thousands and thousands of jasmine blossoms carried in, and they almost layer the tea and then put a layer of the jasmine blossoms and then another layer of the tea, almost like a lasagna.
Wow.
And they allow the blossoms when they come in, they're not fully opened, they're mostly closed. And when they open throughout the night, that's when they infuse the tea with its essence. In the morning, normally it's a big affair. All of the village comes to help out, because it's very tedious and arduous work to pick every single jasmine blossom out of the tea. And they do that again and again and again. They do it for a minimum of 5 nights for the tea to be this impregnated with the real fragrance.
No sleeping.
Yeah. it's
Wow.
pretty crazy work.
And you've seen it in person.
Yes. It's pretty amazing when you see it in person, and when you see the amount of work and skill that is needed for tea, from tea pickers to tea masters to tea roasters. If one of them messes up, it messes the whole thing up. So it has to be, people do this job because they love it. Very much so. It's a passion thing for sure.
But the jasmine blossom doesn't have caffeine, does it?
No, the
No,
Jasmine blossom
yeah.
itself does not have caffeine.
Yeah.
The caffeine comes from the tea itself.
Yeah.
We call true teas the teas that have caffeine and
Mm-hmm.
come from the Camellia sinensis plant.
Mhm.
All the other herbal
Herbals.
teas or tisanes, they are teas that normally are with no caffeine whatsoever, like lavender, rose, peppermint, all of those things. A lot of people still call them tea, but they're more like herbal infusions.
Yes, of course.
Unfortunately, there's no process yet that can take the caffeine out of the tea without being detrimental for the actual health benefits of flavor. And a lot of the extraction methods that they use is still
Fluoride
solvent.
and things.
It's solvent
Yeah.
based, so it's not good for you.
Incredible. So what temperature is the water going to be for this
So
particular
for
tea?
green teas, white teas, and oolongs, we have to brew it with 80 degrees, between 90 and 80 degrees. I prefer 80 degrees for green teas. So if you don't have a fancy kettle, as I do, you can, of course, just add a quarter of cold water to the bottom of your teapot or the bottom of your cup, wherever you're brewing your tea in, and then boiling water, and only at the end you put the tea. So when the tea goes into the water is already at the perfect temperature, and you won't burn the tea, won't over extract.
So say again, you have a cup, you've gotten,
So imagine that.
just for your average person that wants to
Yes.
make 80
So
degrees of
Put this
green
down.
tea.
Imagine that this is your cup, and you're putting a tea bag here. So you find the middle of that cup, and then the middle of that middle, so a quarter.
Okay, got you.
And you fill that quarter with cold water,
cold water, and then
the rest
got
of
you,
it
got you,
boiling,
Got you.
and only after you put the tea in.
So it's never meeting straight boil.
Never,
Got you.
ever.
Understand.
Green tea especially is very sensitive. As soon as it gets contact with boiling water, you will burn, go bitter, and go astringent, and leave that dry mouth feeling.
Understand.
That's not what green tea is
No,
supposed to
we
be
don't want
doing.
that.
No.
Tea master says no.
Yes, definitely not. So this little guy here, his name is Albert, and he's my tea pet. He normally, when you have Kung Fu tea, you have a tea pet, and that is to share tea with someone that is not at the table, or to set your intentions, or if you have a loved one that is no longer with you and you would like to share tea with them.
The tea pet resembles all of that.
Yeah.
So your intentions, or whether it's a loved one.
And it has different animals and things that change color, like this little guy.
And this is made to have tea poured on him.
Yes. So this little guy is made out of yixing clay.
Okay.
So this type of clay is non-glazed, and it will gain a patina with the tea. It will gain a different color.
Oh, it's going to change.
It's going to change over time.
Wow.
Yeah. So if you have it for
So
20
you
years.
feed Albert.
Yes, exactly. It kind of lingers with us because he wants some tea.
I love that.
So we first warm up the teaware, almost like you do when cooking. You don't put something straight
On a
into the
cold
pan.
plate,
And you'll be able to see how much they're going to unravel, kind of dance around.
It's a very quick brew.
Yes. So this is the rinse. A lot of people don't even drink the rinse. They just check it out because this is to wake up the leaves.
Oh,
and it's also to wake up the senses.
Yeah.
So you'll be able to have a smell. Just be careful, it's hot. And it's already like...
Amazing.
So I'm going to give this little guy to Albert.
Oh,
He
okay.
deserves it.
Yeah. I'm going to have a sip of my tea.
You should definitely slurp
Definitely slurp. Okay.
as much as you can. So it opens your taste buds. It also brings the temperature down. So when you're sipping on coffee, you should do that. When you're sipping on wine, you should do that to really aerate it and to allow your taste buds to pick up on notes that you normally wouldn't. Also, after you swallow, you should breathe out through your nose. So it brings back the aroma, and you pick up a lot more when it's in your olfactory system.
Wow.
It's good.
So do you slurp all your drinks now?
Look, I do tea,
Yeah.
I do wine,
Yeah.
but if I'm in Europe and my mom is like in a 2-kilometer radius, she will know. And she will be like, keep in touch, like, what are you doing? All the money that I spend in your education and you're slurping. Like, okay.
So funny.
Yeah, have
Thank
some
you
more.
so much.
Pleasure.
Another slurp.
Mm.
Oh, like that.
It takes practice.
It does.
The first couple of times that
Yeah.
I did it, I almost killed myself. We went through the wrong pipe, and I was like
So-
coughing for a good 20 minutes.
So funny. Oh wow, thank you so much.
It's been my pleasure.
So we've already looked, that was where you went from that to that?
No, so
No.
I went from that to this, and this to the cups. So this is the guy one, which basically is translated to cup and lid. Then this is the Gando Bay. This is what is called a fairness cup. When you leave the tea in the water, it doesn't matter how many cups you served. The last cup will be over brewed, because the water is still there and is still brewing. So to make sure that everyone is sharing the same flavor, you pour the whole liquid into a different vessel and then serve
then-
from there.
Understood.
That way you make sure that the first cup and the last cup taste the same.
That's equal.
There's different ways of doing that. Like in Shaozhou, there's 3 cups and they put them all together and they kind of serve like that.
Oh, right, to even
To try to even it out. But I like the Gandao Bay. I think that it's a great add-on. This little guy, this is actually quite a large teapot for Konfucha. Normally I use it for teas that expand quite a bit. But I thought that today we'll use the Gaiwan instead, so you could see that in action.
Well, thank you so much for coming and
Pleasure.
sharing your tea with me and all the wisdom, and Albert, of
Yes.
course. And yeah, we'll be sharing this with as many people as I can. We'll be
Yay.
telling about you, because people can buy tea from you, can't they?
Yeah, they can. They can go to the website at www.casadechat.com.au. I know, it's a hard name. I'm sorry.
No? Love it.
We also have our Instagram account at casadechat_tea. So people can find us there too. Before COVID, we used to do events in people's houses. Like we would go to people's houses and bring all of this, and they would have friends, and we would do that for up to, I think it was up to eight people, to try to keep it as small as possible. And it was during those moments that you could really see what tea could do. The conversations went really deep and really interesting from the get-go. People started to have conversations that you normally don't see, and I think that's why tea would be a great tool to help us, especially now.
Exactly, in these crazy big times.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Mafalda. It's
My
been
pleasure.
it's been wonderful.
Thank you.